Hey everyone, welcome to the CyberHub Engage podcast. Still in beautiful Augusta, Georgia, the beautiful, still freshly smelling Georgia Cyber Center. I mean, this still smells like new paint in here. It's unbelievable. I've got Dr. Alex Schwarzmann, the Dean of the School of Computer and Cyber Sciences at Augusta University. Dr. Schwarzmann, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
I heard you speak, I think, a few months ago when SunTrust had their event here. You were on a panel with, I think, Steve and a few other folks, and you resonated with a lot of your messaging. So I'm glad we finally get a chance to speak and interact. Hey everyone, I really want you to help me in supporting our early sponsor, Get Smart Eye. So Get Smart Eye still in beta testing, but what Get Smart Eye is, it's an amazing app that lets you control your privacy, whether it be documents, pictures, anything that you want to share with your friends or not. Think of Snapchat, only no screenshots and no one else looking over it. So if you travel a lot, if you're in airports, coffee shops, shared workspaces, and you care about your privacy, Get Smart Eye is the right app for you to protect your privacy. And here's the deal. Get Smart Eye is still in beta testing. I use the app all the time. In fact, some of you know that I travel a lot, and when I do, I don't like people looking at my screen at airports. I do everything off my phone, and as such, I use Get Smart Eye for all my sensitive documents and all my planning. So here's what you need to do to be one of our early technology adapters, an exclusive offer for CyberHub Engage listeners. Text 41411, again, that's 41411, 41411, and type in the message of your text, Smart Eye. Then reply to the SMS that you're going to get with the letter Y, like Yankee, and download the Apple Test Flight app. Then go back to your SMS and you'll get a link to download the Smart Eye app. Download the Smart Eye app and use it. Again, this is an early offer for only CyberHub Engage users. Text 41411. Again, that's 41411 with Smart Eye in the message. It is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. I guess we need a whole month for it. I think we need a whole year, but what do I know?
Well, it's a 24/7. Cybersecurity awareness is a 24/7 job. Yeah.
It is, and I think oftentimes people look at it as a 9 to 5. And I always tell people hackers don't sleep.
Yeah, I recently attended a chief security officer conference in New England, and a common question is, how do I know I'm done protecting myself? And that's asked naively by quite a few corporate leaders, and the answer, of course, you're never done.
You're always in it, almost always.
It's a battle.
So I was over the weekend. I got a message in this WhatsApp group of a bunch of us cyber guys, and it was an image of a CEO's day and a CISO day, and it was all in emojis. So you wake up, you're happy, the CEO's happy, he wakes up, he's relaxed, eating his breakfast, drinking his cup of coffee, going over. The CISO wakes up and he's like, like, I'm waking up into did anything happen overnight? Or is there anything in my email? Is there any report, is there any events, anything I got to be worried about? So you're constantly,
yes.
You're constantly, I think Michael forgot his glasses. It's like you're constantly worried about it, and so it was like.
I can throw in a joke for you about CISOs. After a hard days at work, CISO slept like a baby. He woke up every 2 hours and cried.
Oh, I love that. So tell us a little bit about how you got into cybersecurity.
So that was quite unexpected, actually. And at the time, it was 2005, and I was at the University of Connecticut doing a lot of fun research in distributed computing and fault tolerance. I had a research team. I had plenty of funding, National Science Foundation, publications, travel to conferences internationally, nationally, a blast. And something started happening around that time, and that was in the wake of the Congress passing the HAVA Act of 2002.
Right.
Help America Vote Act.
Correct.
So The act itself was a response to the year 2000 elections, and specifically what happened in Florida. And many think that this was a political issue, but actually it was a technological issue. Specifically, the hang Chad problem that some of us are remembering. That was a very bad technology to use for elections, and so the HABA Act made it illegal to use such a thing. Good thing. And there were several $1 billion that were given to the states to modernize their election infrastructure. And because everything was done so fast, people didn't think, well, what should be modernized to? And that led to the situation where immature technology was prematurely used nationwide in each state. And so when people started realizing that was the case, at the time I was in Connecticut, and Connecticut decided to finally spend the money and buy new voting machines, the governor formed a VTSB, Voting Technologies Standards Board, and I was invited to serve on the board. And so, I met with the board several times, and then Connecticut finally issued call for proposals to purchase equipment. And I really did not want to do that because I was having too much fun, doing my research. So just as I was going to bow out, I shared this with my wife, and she said, "But isn't this service? Isn't service part of your university responsibilities?" So that was the only argument she won so quickly. I said yes, and so I did it. And this is how I started in cybersecurity. The next year, I established the Connecticut Voting Technology Research Center at the University of Connecticut. And we've been operating until, the center is operating even now in my absence. But in 2018, I moved here to Augusta, Georgia, to become the dean.
How do you like Augusta?
Love it. First of all, there is no snow to shovel, which is wonderful.
Yes.
And but more seriously, the reason I came here is that the university is going through a very spectacular transformation. It is becoming, the vision is to become a national research university. And of course, you probably know that the health part of the university with the Medical College of Georgia is already a nationally well-known research college, right? It was established in 1828, long history of research. But in sciences and in computer science in particular, there was no research until about a year or two ago when the school was formed. I do want to mention that computer science education here is 40 years old. In fact, later this fall, we will be celebrating the 40th anniversary.
Congratulations.
Yes, we're going to have a party. But the program didn't have a home. It was moving from one college to another. But a couple of years ago, the decision was made to have computing and cybersecurity in particular, a strategic direction for the university. The school was formed. I saw the enthusiasm, and I believed the PR. And so I came here, and I'm happy to report that PR was actually accurate. I am hiring faculty as fast as I can. The plan is to hire 30 faculty in 3 years, which is, I think, a national kind of a scale activity, because I do not know another university in North America that will hire 10 computer scientists in 1 year. No, it's a tall order.
I don't either. That's a very tall order, especially considering the shortages that you have in qualified people.
Absolutely. Well, I'm happy to report that for this academic year, I hired exactly 10. 5 already here, and 5 will be arriving in time for the spring semester, starting in January. 5 of the people are internationally visible senior scientists that no university in the country would be ashamed to have. And 5 are more junior people with great pedigrees, tremendous potential, great research culture. So I'm looking forward to wonderful things to happen.
Being that you're kind of looking at the research aspect, is there a specific technology in cybersecurity that you guys are really kind of looking to invest time and money on researching?
So so cybersecurity, it's a popular buzzword. Right?
I agree
Cyber,
with you.
it's a.
I think when we say cyber, you leave it out to definitions, right? What is cyber?
It's like five blind men trying to identify an elephant, and everybody says, it's sort of long, looks like a tail, and so on. To me, cybersecurity is a branch of sound computer science. You cannot be a researcher in cybersecurity without being a competent researcher in computer science. It's like saying, the next quote is attributed to me, but although I never said it, but I can repeat what was attributed to me, which is, how can you claim to be an excellent surgeon and a lousy doctor at the same time? I mean, it's sort of inconsistent. And so what I'm doing right now, I'm building a sound, a compelling college, research-oriented in computer science, where cybersecurity, one of the most important strategic directions. So in the first year, I'm hiring anybody who is good, as long as they're bona fide researchers in computer science in mainstream areas. In the second year, I'll focus where the holes are, and in the third year, we'll see what happens in the third year. But cybersecurity, there are several areas. More directly to your question, obviously crypto is extremely important. Obviously, as we move to the inevitable future in which quantum computing is reality, we have to think about that and research. So I am recruiting actively in quantum computing and crypto. Secure system engineering is extremely important. Unfortunately, today in the commercial enterprise, cybersecurity is an afterthought. Right? People build a system and then they worry about it being secure. I mean, this is the reality. I mean,
it's like building a building and then thinking where to put the doors.
Not exactly. I mean, maybe the sprinkler system, right? So, and it is understandable, because to sell a building, you must build a building first, so people can see and touch and be in it, right? Is it fire safe? Well, it doesn't cross anybody's mind until there is a fire. And so most vendors, especially in the software, I mean, they're pushing forward with their products because otherwise they will not make it commercially. They have to release their products as fast as possible, and security is less visible until it is an emergency, right? So that is an issue. So we have to learn that it is not, we're building our aircraft, for example, amazingly safe, right? And you can't say, well, the accidents never happen. Well, suppose something happens. Well, you have to be prepared. And so we have to learn to build security into any system that we create. And so secure systems engineering is an important area that I intend to pursue in my college. People who are able to build secure systems from the start, not as an afterthought.
Well, aren't we seeing that now with kind of like the DevSecOps with secure developers and kind of secure code development and secure, and you're starting to see a bigger push of having that kind of start at the foundation of building a software or building a computer program? Well,
obviously there is greater awareness nationwide, and so we're doing better overall. But the opposition does not rest either.
No, I completely agree with you. I think that I always tell someone that, while you're going to sleep, like you said, a CISO wakes up every 2 hours crying. It's because every 2 hours there's not even.
Yeah.
I was in Israel in June, mm-hmm. and we were at Israel's electric company, and their CISO, who's legendary in the world of information security. Mm-hmm. The guy's been doing it for 30 years. I mean, no small feature. He says every 20 minutes they get 13,275,000 attacks.
Well, he's probably exaggerating somewhat. Some of these are pings that are suspicious.
Correct.
But yes, it's a war out there. I mean, that is absolutely true. And every single company is under attack. I was recently working with a financial company, and their network control center is science fiction-like, really. amazing facility. They invest, I don't know how many $1 million in cybersecurity to protect themselves. It's a big financial company, and billions of dollars. So they have a map of the universe, and they're saying, well, here's the countries are colored. So China is red in particular, and not because it is communist, but because it is a threat. And so they're showing, here's a town in China, and every 8 in the morning Chinese time, they start attacking us, and every 5 p.m. they stop. So clearly, it is a some sort of organized government organization that whose job is to attack. We worked with briefly with a small materials company that supplies fancy stuff to Pratt & Whitney. They were penetrated by Chinese for about 2 years. They didn't know it until somebody got greedy and they withdrew $800,000, and then the bells rang and FBI came in and something happened. Okay, but otherwise nobody would have known, and they would have been drained dry of their intellectual property. And this is happening with many companies. I'm sure you know there is a saying: there are only two types of computer systems: those that have been hacked, and those that have been hacked but their owners do not know it yet.
Right. I mean, but that's kind of like that's kind of the way we look at security today. Is, inevitably it's going to happen.
Yes.
Inevitably you're going to have to deal with it. The question is, though, as we kind of look at security and as you look at your program here at Augusta University and the researchers, and you kind of started talking about quantum, and I've always said that over the last 3-4 months I've been researching quantum and cyber, and for every person who says quantum's going to destroy us, I'm like, well, not necessarily, because quantum's also going to create a new level of security, and there's going to be challenges, but there's also going to be good stuff that happens. What's the good that you see that's going to come out of quantum?
It's a new technology, and right now it is fairly young. Without there are some practical applications, but not that many, almost none. But it's important to anticipate the technology and to do the theoretical work that will help us understand what becomes less secure. And as you pointed out correctly, how do we use now some very different level of computation enabled by quantum to do something new and different, right? So, but that is inevitable. As we moved from vacuum tubes to transistors, I mean, it was also a revolution. Right. that completely changed the speed of the computation with which we.
But that's all quantum
operated.
is. Quantum is changing the speed of computation.
And the style of the computation.
And the style
right.
of computation,
there are ways quantum makes it possible to detect whether something is happening or the state is changing. So it's a different paradigm of low-level computation. But again, this is sort of a natural stage in evolution. As another popular technology that I'm sure is a buzzword. Wouldn't blockchain solve all of our problems?
No.
Yes. Good answer.
No. As someone who's been working on blockchain since 2013, I can tell you personally, I think that blockchain has specific applications that can ease the way business is done, increase transparency, but it doesn't solve all of our problems. I think the people who say that are the people who who don't quite understand how technology is adapted. I mean, blockchain has died off. Think of 2 years ago, 3 years ago, where Bitcoins were $22,000. I mean, they're now half of what they were worth.
Really? I wasn't following, yeah.
They dropped down to where a Bitcoin was worth around 3,000. Now it's back around the 10,000 mark. Last time I checked, and I haven't checked in a few weeks, so that might have changed. But when people attribute blockchain, they attribute it to cryptocurrency. But blockchain has some solutions. It's a tool.
It's a tool that solves. It's a ledger, right?
Right.
That people can trust. That is resilient. That is distributed. That doesn't have centralized control. But it is a tool, and it's a strong hammer, but not everything is fixed with a hammer, and so it has its applications.
Do you feel like as a whole, we're reaching a point in cybersecurity where the challenges that we have around technology are the same? We're just, like I said, it's when you were a kid, you'd get that little toy with the round and square blocks, and kids are kind of trained to put that in there. And I feel like in cyber, when I go to a conference, right, and I'm speaking to vendors, I feel like a lot of times they're trying to fit a square block in a circle kind of hole.
They have, so they have to try to find applications. Well, yeah, it's a different landscape, and there are quite a few areas that need different kind of attention. How does some company check whether or not their new software is secure, right? They say, well, have you used crypto in your code? Let me see if you used crypto in your code. And yes, there is the crypto is peppered all over the code. What does it mean? It means absolutely nothing. It's like a bad student saying, well, I studied, but you failed the exam, right? Yes, I peppered my system with crypto. We were working with, so it's not only one of my Agilas Kiayas, one of the best cybersecurity people I know, he's at the University of Cambridge. He says, don't use cryptography, hire a cryptographer, because you need sometimes a level of expertise that is not available out there. So I worked in the election system security, and I wanted to give one example of fallacious use of cryptography. I'm not going to name any vendors to protect the innocent. So there was a system that we evaluated on behalf of the state of Connecticut. Everything in the system was encrypted, absolutely everything. We could not get anywhere with it, except that what was left implicit is the relationship between encrypted blocks. And by observing system operation, we were able to see and infer which blocks do what. We have identified which blocks contain counters and names of the candidate. And if you physically swap the blocks, just physically in space, suddenly one candidate's counter becomes the other candidate's counter. This is breaking completely encrypted system without decrypting it, right? So end of the story.
It's interesting because what you say is the same people who say, well, our system is completely encrypted. Well, at what level do you have the encryption? Right, at the file level, at the folder level, at the system level.
What happens at runtime?
Exactly. What's encrypted? How's it getting?
Okay.
I mean,
so incompetence, or I should say, naivete, prevails in many endeavors.
Well, I think a lot of times, I found it really interesting. I did a whole series around cryptography on the podcast early on, and I was searching night and day to find 5 chief information security officers that can explain cryptography for me. I couldn't find them. And I've searched high and dry. I found 3. 3 that I could have a level of cryptography implementation in cybersecurity and what it really means to your system. Most of them said, I have someone who deals with it. And then you speak to the person who deals with it and they don't know what they're doing.
Yes, I mean that's unfortunately the case, and I think that this reminds me, in the 90s when the networked systems became popular.
Correct.
Nobody wanted to invest in network management or distributed system management.
No one.
Because it doesn't sell anything, right? It is only visible when something goes wrong. And so there were products that were supposed to be distributed products, but that could not be managed. And people didn't appreciate that you have to pay for network management. Today, of course, we understand this, but I think we're in the same situation with regards to cybersecurity. It's not cheap. It will cut into your profits, but we must do it.
It feels like you can't explain it. I think from a research perspective, it's very interesting. So I spend doing the show, I spend a lot of time speaking to people from academia like yourself, people from industry like Michael, who was here right before you, Chief Information Security Officer for the local tax slayer. I've spoken to practitioners, and I try not to speak to people who sell stuff, because typically all they want to talk about is what they're selling and not the problem they solve. So I'm a strictly vendor-free show, meaning I have yet to really, other than the first few episodes, I haven't interviewed any cybersecurity vendors, because typically they want to come on here and peddle what they're selling, and there's enough people who do that. You don't need me for it. I try to be the voice of the industry. And there's a distinct, I noticed a distinct separation between academia and industry, in that academia goes, we need to spend the money and do this, right? And industry's like, we wish it was that easy, because we've got 15 different things on our wish list, and we can only do so much with the amount of money we're funded. How do we bridge the gap so that academia can actually help industry? And how does Augusta University, and how do you plan on doing it?
Fantastic question. And but I think you're slightly behind the times there.
Maybe. I don't say I know everything.
So what you're saying is, it was certainly true, even in the 21st century, that industry and academia did not talk that much to each other, and most of the exciting research problems were being defined by faculty researchers at the universities, and they had absolutely no need to deal with the industry.
Correct.
And something started happening, and I think that Amazon is an excellent example of what is different now with the industry. So how did Amazon begin?
I couldn't tell you.
Well, weren't they a online bookseller?
They were an online bookstore, and Jeff Bezos did it from his basement. Or his garage. I can't remember which one.
So, something like that.
Google was in the I think Google was in the garage, and Amazon was in the basement.
But Google was a technology company from
Correct.
the beginning. Amazon, they just tried to
sold
sell
books.
Right? And they grew and they grew and they sold something else, and now they realized that they need to be more technologically advanced to be competitive. And in the 21st century, I can't place a year on it, they also understood that IBM can no longer sell you a solution off the shelf. 20 years ago, you would go to IBM and say, I have this problem, and the IBMer will say, we will install in the morning, a solution. Today, each serious company, like Amazon, need to develop the technology in-house, because there is nothing else that's available. And suddenly you see Amazon becoming a high-tech company. Yes, they're selling much stuff, but they're also
in the cloud business.
They also sell technology. And they also devoured some wonderful faculty researchers, by the way. I don't know how many people with PhDs in computer science they employ, but quite a few, I'm sure. And so what is happening is that the university researchers see that some of the very exciting research problems are now found within the industrial sphere, or government sphere, or defense sphere. So this is a change. When I talk to senior researchers today, and for example, the 5 people that I hired here, senior people, one of the first questions I ask, who else do we collaborate with outside of the university? What other partners are there? By the way, the partnership is what this building is all about. 2 buildings, Georgia Cyber Center. So they reach out by themselves to industry, and industry today is much more receptive. 20 years ago, they say, we'll go to IBM if we need anything, right? I apologize for plugging IBM so much.
It's all right. We're gonna. Mike is gonna edit the name out and be like, if you want your name, and you're gonna have to pay us.
XYZ. Yeah. So we're very fortunate here, because again, computer science is extremely important. Cybersecurity is important to us. We will be a nationally visible college of computer science, or else I get fired.
I don't think you're going anywhere, Dr. Schwartz.
I don't think so. Up, only up. And so we have wonderful neighbors. And by the way, remember that cybersecurity is a branch of computer science. You have to have a lot of computer science before you can call yourself a competent cybersecurity scientist or practitioner. So we have wonderful neighbors. We have National Security Agency here, 15 minutes. We have Savannah River National Lab just across this river that we cannot see. I can see, you cannot see it. Yeah.
My back's to the river.
Yeah.
That's because I have the paranoia from the military. I gotta always look at the door. Everywhere I sit, if my back's towards the entrance where someone can open the door behind my back, no.
You get anxiety. Yeah. Speaking of military, we have Fort Gordon.
Right.
With U.S. Army Cyber Command. I believe they will be soon renamed into something more threatening. Do not know what the name is. And actually, it's not just U.S. Army. There is a unit of Air Force intelligence at Fort Gordon. There is a naval unit there dealing with intelligence. By the way, they call it Port Gordon.
Because of the river?
No, because they're Navy. Yeah. And so we get a lot of interaction with these people, and there is a lot of impetus towards developing collaborative research, and I have to hold people back, saying, "Give me time to staff up. I need to build up my critical mass." So we're doing good with 10 people joining, in addition to 10 that I already had here. But we still need more. I mean, you need to have critical mass. You need at least 40. I think that's the price of admission into the upper echelons. But we are developing relationships with. We're having days where we meet. Our faculty meets with industrial government researchers. We're planning a meeting like that with Savannah River National Lab. So even though initially Savannah River National Lab was interested in cybersecurity aspects, but the more we talk to them, the more it is clear that they have quite a few other problems involving computing that they need solving. And in fact, Savannah River is supporting my faculty search. I mean, because they want to help us find people who will be interested in collaborating with them. So it is happening. You mentioned TaxSlayer earlier. I mean, we have a developing relationship with TaxSlayer where right now it's at the level of student internships and senior design projects. But I believe it will happen that we do some collaborative research. By the way, TaxSlayer is not a good example like Amazon. I mean, they began as I don't know, tax.
And now they're a technology company.
And now they're a technology.
But it seems like that's the shift too. UPS, they're making the shift to technology, right? Huge.
UPS is a fantastic example. Another one is 2 words. They used to make postal meters. Pitney Bowes.
Okay, never
they
heard
used
of
to
it.
make. Oh,
seriously, I'm sorry.
It's a huge company.
I'm a millennial. I'm like a senior millennial. As Sarah says, we're senior millennials. So
they used to make.
We care about Apple.
Postal stamps they used to make, right?
Okay.
Today, they're business intelligence company. I mean, they have developed tools that allow for the business processes to understand themselves and optimize their operation because they're also in the shipping business. So I understand they did tremendous work with eBay in helping them to pre-stage popular items so they can be delivered locally as opposed to remote. I'm not sure if they work with Amazon.
But that's a similar model to what Amazon's doing everywhere now. I mean, you're right, which is you're seeing the traditional model of, UPS, we all think of the brown truck. Mm-hmm. But I think the brown truck today only accounts for 70% of their revenue, and they anticipate that the brown trucks will account to 30% of their revenue by 2025, mm-hmm. and they're going to be the other 70% is going to be technology. And I've seen them mess around with blockchain. I know they've got a few blockchain projects going on where they're really looking at real implementation of it. Some of it is around pharmaceuticals and some of the new laws that are coming around pharmaceuticals, where the federal government now holds UPS and FedEx and DHL and USPS legally accountable to the delivery of illicit drugs if they can't verify the source it came from to the source it's being delivered to. So if I deliver you fentanyl and you die from fentanyl and I'm UPS, the government can actually sue me for delivering you to fentanyl and not being able to trace it from where it comes from. So they're building on the blockchain. I was there for a roundtable meeting that their CIO had at UPS, and it was around blockchain, and it was just around kind of taking it from the lab to the patient. So
I don't see necessarily what blockchain has to do with it, but I'm sure there is an application there. I mean,
it has some. There is an application for it actually, because blockchain allows for everyone to work on one chain. So from essentially the moment you develop the chemical in the lab, and then where the pill goes, and then how the pill's ownership of it, and the digital signatures that are required.
The chain of custody.
The chain of custody of it,
which is, of course, very important. Right?
From the doctor who writes the prescription to the pharmacist who fills it, to the driver who picks it up, to the warehouse it goes to the driver that takes it out to delivery, to the patient who signs for it. Well, all of that chain of custody today is
best effort,
and it needs to be. The government wants it to be foolproof. More robust, absolutely. And so that they can hold people accountable. If you make bad fentanyl, or
that's one buzzword I do not know. So stop repeating that.
Fentanyl.
Yeah.
It is. So fentanyl is essentially the new meth.
Oh.
It's through China. It's I think 15 or 20 times more potent than meth. It's the drug that is killing around 300 people a day in the U.S.
Really.
So it's killing more people today in the U.S. It's killing more people today in the U.S. than meth and cocaine combined. And it's coming directly from China. And it's one of the points that the Trump administration with the Chinese trade war are insisting that the Chinese curtail, because it's coming out of China being shipped using illicit documents that the Chinese know what's going on. And some of it was just caught. The largest fentanyl shipment ever was just caught in the port of Connecticut. And it had, in San Diego coming through Mexico. I'm very, very sorry. They caught a big dose out in Connecticut that had just one dose could have killed people, and it was 450 million pounds of it.
Million pounds?
Yeah.
Wow.
It could have wiped out an entire... If everyone in the U.S. population had taken one of ththose pills, it could have wiped out the entire U.S. population.
Well, China manufactures a lot of stuff,
Correct.
But
then the government claims that they don't know, but we know that they're communists, and they know when a Muslim goes to the bathroom to pee. You want to tell me they don't know that these guys are manufacturing fentanyl? Yeah. It's a bad argument.
So I mean, but the supply chain of custody is extremely important, and in particular in cybersecurity. So good solutions for any of these problems are not necessarily single purpose. I mean,
Correct.
They can be repurposed to various things. One of the big DoD concerns is where do the components come from in China, right? I mean,
Correct.
There are legitimate components, and there are components that look like an Intel chip. But
so when you were on the SunTrust panel, I asked a question around supply chain manufacturing to the gentleman from the NSA.
I don't remember that, but what did I say?
So I said, you talk about trusting your supply chain. Well, if we bring a firewall, and that firewall has parts of it that are manufactured in Malaysia, in India, how do we trust that? I mean,
you don't. Yeah.
Right, but then you still need to use it. So we either in-house and create a manufacturing industry that creates the devices all locally sourced. Right, in the U.S. that are used in DoD, which is expensive. It's going to cost you more money, but then you're not going to have to take it apart. So the question is, all the people that I'm paying to take apart every single device and check it, is that cost offset by manufacturing it locally? And if we take advantage of opportunity zones, could we reduce that
Yeah.
cost through state and federal subsidies and
Excellent
opportunity
questions.
zones?
I think that's an important area, and I know that. So, for example, I know that in critical applications, let's say 1,000 components are purchased from a legitimate supplier, supposedly, and a certain non-trivial fraction of them are tested. I think in some cases up to 10%, randomly chosen.
Correct.
And some are tested destructively. In other words, you know, sometimes these components you cannot disassemble them. You have to break them to see what's inside. So it is a real problem. And a different problem is that the components may not be counterfeit, but they may be recycled. And so nobody knows what sort of damage they may have sustained, you know, being overheated or torn out of the previous components. There is a very expensive, there are very expensive medical devices that can be used, I forget the name, very powerful X-ray, you know, 3D X-ray technology that they use to look inside the chip and see whether layer by layer, without destroying it, whether or not it is a legitimately manufactured component or not.
Right, but that's costly. You're talking like an MRI machine.
It's
Almost.
not an MRI machine, but it's a similar machine, right? It doesn't have any tubes like that. It's more of a X-ray type machine. But so today we can do that. I mean, there is research that is, but it takes something like several hours per component. And
Which is not practical.
And who can afford this?
Correct.
Right, exactly.
Which is not practical. So, I mean, that's one of those, when I was here on that panel and you were on the panel, that was one of the questions that I really kind of, I constantly hear about it, because when I'm talking to federal agencies, you know, we talk about the supply chain integrity that goes into the federal system, whether it be what's going on with Huawei, with the Chinese company with 5G, and so much other stuff, which is, you know, do we want this? Do we want all Chinese technology on our network? And if that's the case, then how really secure and private is our network?
Well, I don't know. It's a silly joke from Armageddon, if you ever saw that movie.
I did.
There is a great scene there where the American spaceship does not start. You know, the engine doesn't start, and so the Russian cosmonaut takes a hammer and starts hammering it, and the Americans are saying, "What are you doing? These are complicated and sophisticated American components." And the Russian dude says, "Russian components, American components, all made in Taiwan." So it's a right. So this is a big issue, but we need to, you know, manufacturing locally, you know, is a possibility. But you know, Apple manufactures everything in China pretty much.
Not as much anymore. They've
really, yeah.
They've built a few manufacturing centers. I think one's in Texas,
and
right?
One's in Austin, Texas.
One's in Austin, Texas, and another one they just announced that they're building out in the Midwest. I think Ohio. I forgot where I saw it.
Well, that's good. I mean, that's where we should.
I mean, think of the new iPhones that came out. The previous version of iPhones was $1,100. These new iPhones are $700 to $900 to $1,000. So they've been able to reduce the cost.
I wonder if that'll stay.
Yeah, I don't know. But every time I see a box that says designed in California, made in China. But I'll check more carefully next time.
I say stuff that says
made in the U.S.
or made in India
or
assembled in Malaysia.
Yeah.
And I don't trust it personally. I don't.
Well, it depends on how secure your application needs to be. Right?
It's inevitable that you have to use something that's made somewhere you don't trust.
Yeah. I mean,
in today's world. But I think the other part of it is, like you said, if we're just simply able to understand what we're using the product for and where the applications are coming from, would be far more secure.
Right, and of course the saddest comment is that the human element is still the weakest link, and no matter what we do, it's like no matter how rational are traffic laws? Well, there is a driver under influence.
And that's why we got self-driving cars.
Don't even go there. I mean, yeah. I will not drive call me a Luddite. The next car I buy, if I turn off the engine and if I press on the brake pedal and it doesn't work, I'm not going to buy it. Right? So I need to have physical control of the vehicle.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into a self-driving car debate. I think we
Good.
can. I think that's a whole other animal within itself that creates a new set of challenges, not only infrastructure-wise but security-wise. I've had that discussion with multiple people, and I'm like, met with someone from an unnamed company that's investing in research in self-driving cars, and like I said, you don't want to badmouth the innocent. And I said, so how are you guys addressing security and IoT with connected? And he goes, well, right now we just want to prove the technology works. And I go, how are you dealing with security on connected devices? And he goes, well, we're trying to prove technology.
Well, it's the same as the usual thing. In order to get something done, you worry about the functionality first, and
Correct.
cybersecurity takes the back seat. I mean, and that's a problem. We have to learn to invest in cyber secure systems upfront.
Yes, we can.
Or else it will only get worse.
Yes, it will. Dr. Schwarzmann, I want to thank you for
My
joining
pleasure.
us today.
Mhm.
I'd love to have a more in-depth conversation
Right,
with you.
sure.
We'll schedule
Mhm.
some time and get you back on here, because I think that if you and I got into a really good conversation, we'd probably end up somewhere in quantum space era, cyber, cryptography, which
Sure,
is...
yeah.
I did one with Chris Lundberg, and I urge you to listen to that episode where we talked about how quantum really is going to shape cyber. And I'd love to connect you. If you don't know Chris from the CDC, I think he'd be.
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
I think he'd be a great guy to kind of have as a partner in what you guys are doing. He's based in Atlanta, but he's a wonderful, wonderful person. And the CDC is a great organization, so he does a
We've
lot
heard of
for
Atlanta here in Augusta.
it's that one city over there where there's a big airport, largest in the world, no big deal. A lot of traffic, but 4 hours.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Schwarzmann.
Yep. Thanks for inviting me.
You're listening to the CyberHub Engage podcast. We're going to be back with more after a few moments.